They climbed past the forbidden line. Within hours, their fingernails had grown 2 weeks' worth. Their hair was longer. Their skin was different. By the time they stumbled back down, they looked decades older than when they'd started. Every single one of them was dead within a year. Not from injury, not from disease, from old age. They were young men. That's not a horror movie. That's what reportedly happened to a team of Siberian mountaineers who tried to climb Mount Kailash, a peak in western Tibet that no human being has ever summited. Not because it's too tall. Everest is a third taller, and over 9,000 people have stood on top of it. Not because it's too remote. Pilgrims travel there every year by the thousands. Nobody has climbed Mount Kailash because something won't let them. And now, a Chinese monk who spent decades studying forbidden manuscripts locked inside a remote Tibetan monastery is making a claim that has sent shockwaves through the worlds of science, religion, and archaeology. He says the texts describe Kailash not as a mountain at all. They describe it as a machine, an ancient, deliberately constructed device that is still running, still affecting time, still guarding something buried deep inside it, something that was never meant to be found. The mountain that defies physics. Let's start with what we can see, because even before we get to the forbidden texts and the monk's testimony, Mount Kailash is already one of the most scientifically inexplicable places on Earth. It stands 6,638 meters tall in the Ngari prefecture of western Tibet. It's not connected to any surrounding range. It sits alone, isolated, like it was placed there. Its shape is a near-perfect four-sided pyramid. Each face aligns precisely with one of the cardinal directions: north, south, east, west. No natural geological process produces that kind of symmetry. Mountains are formed by tectonic collisions, volcanic activity, erosion. They're rough, irregular, chaotic. Kailash looks like it was designed. And it gets stranger. Compasses don't work near the mountain. The needles spin, they point in random directions, they refuse to settle. Scientists have attributed this to metallic mineral deposits, but no one has been able to study the mountain closely enough to confirm it, because no one is allowed near the summit. At the base of Kailash sit two lakes side by side. Lake Manasarovar is freshwater, perfectly round, eternally calm, and shaped like the sun. It never freezes despite the altitude. Right next to it sits Rakshastal, a saltwater lake shaped like a crescent moon. Its waters are violent and turbulent. Nothing lives in it. Locals say it sometimes vanishes entirely, then reappears. Two lakes, side by side. One representing light, one representing darkness. Perfectly balanced, as if someone designed the whole system. But here's the detail that should keep you up at night. Mount Kailash sits exactly 6,666 kilometers from the North Pole, and exactly 13,332 kilometers from the South Pole. That's precisely double. If you draw lines connecting the world's most ancient sacred sites, the pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, Easter Island, those lines intersect at one point. Mount Kailash. Coincidence? Maybe, but we're just getting started. The mountain that kills climbers. 4 major religions consider Kailash the holiest mountain on earth. Hindus believe it's the home of Lord Shiva, god of destruction and transformation, sitting in eternal meditation at the summit. Buddhists say it's the dwelling place of Buddha Demchok, the embodiment of supreme bliss. Jains revere it as the place where their first spiritual leader achieved liberation. The ancient Bon faith calls it the seat of the sky goddess and the spiritual center of the universe. 4 religions, 1 mountain, and every single one of them agrees on the same rule. Do not climb it. In 1926, British mountaineer Hugh Rutledge scouted the North Face. His verdict? Utterly unclimbable. A decade later, explorer Herbert Tichy attempted the south side and was warned by a local leader that only a man completely without sin could reach the top. Even he, the holy man said, would rather transform himself into a bird and fly there than attempt those frozen walls. In the 1980s, the Chinese government offered legendary mountaineer Reinhold Messner, the first person to climb all 14 8,000ers, the chance to summit Kailash. He refused. He reportedly said it would be like conquering something in the souls of people. Then came the Siberian expedition. The details vary depending on who tells it, but the core account is consistent. A group of climbers pushed past the point where pilgrims are permitted to walk. Within hours, their bodies began changing, hair and fingernails growing at impossible rates, visible aging happening in real time. They turned back, but the damage was done. Every member of the team reportedly died of old age-related causes within months, despite being young and physically fit. In 2001, a Chinese climbing team received official permission to attempt the summit. Before they could begin, protests erupted across Asia. Governments intervened, the expedition was canceled, and the Chinese government issued a permanent ban on all climbing of Mount Kailash. No exceptions, no permits, no appeals. They didn't just say the mountain is sacred. They made it illegal to try. Why? What exactly are they protecting? Or protecting us from? The forbidden texts. This is where the story turns from strange to disturbing. According to recent reports, a Chinese monk who spent decades in a remote Tibetan monastery gained access to manuscripts that most monks never see. Restricted texts, writings preserved for centuries, accessible only to the most senior members of the order, texts that had been deliberately hidden from outsiders. What these manuscripts reportedly describe is not a sacred mountain, not a natural formation, not even a holy site in the traditional sense. They describe a structure. The texts allegedly detail symmetry, patterns, and design elements that indicate artificial construction. They describe Mount Kailash as an anchor point, a deliberately engineered mechanism that affects time, perception, and biological processes in the surrounding area. The manuscripts warn that electronics fail near the mountain, that human bodies deteriorate, that the summit is not a peak but a seal, covering something inside. According to the monk's account, the mountain is hollow. Russian ophthalmologist Ernst Muldashev reached a similar conclusion in 1999 when he led an expedition to Kailash with a team of geologists, physicists, and historians. After spending months at the base of the mountain consulting Tibetan lamas and studying the mountain's geometry, Muldashev concluded that Kailash is not a natural mountain. He called it a massive man-made pyramid connected to other ancient pyramid structures around the world. His team also reported hearing sounds coming from inside the mountain at night. Muldashev went further. He said the mountain's proportions, when mapped mathematically, mirror the spatial structure of DNA molecules. He said there was no way this was coincidence. The pyramid that dwarfs Giza. Here's what makes the pyramid theory so hard to dismiss. Mount Kailash isn't surrounded by ordinary terrain. It's surrounded by more than 100 smaller formations that also appear pyramidal in shape. Some of these are estimated between 100 and 1,800 meters tall. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands 146 meters. If these formations are artificial, they dwarf every known human-built structure in history by an almost absurd margin. The four faces of Kailash don't just face the cardinal directions. They show concave indentations, similar to the subtle concavity found on the faces of the Great Pyramid of Giza, a feature invisible from the ground but detectable from above. Both structures share this rare geometric characteristic. Both are aligned to the cardinal points with extraordinary precision. One is in Egypt, the other is in Tibet, separated by thousands of miles and, theoretically, thousands of years. Yet both display engineering signatures that shouldn't exist in the ancient world. And at the summit of Kailash, visible on satellite imagery, is a cross-shaped mark aligned along the 4 cardinal directions. Not carved, not built. It simply exists on the surface as if it were part of the original design. What kind of mountain comes with a logo? The source of life itself. There's another detail about Kailash that is not legend, not myth, and not speculation. It's verified geography. 4 of Asia's greatest rivers originate in the region surrounding Mount Kailash: the Indus, the Sutlej, the Brahmaputra, the Karnali. Each flows in a different cardinal direction. Together, they sustain over 1 billion people. Think about the odds of that. 4 major rivers. 1 source point, 4 different directions, feeding 4 different civilizations. The probability of that arrangement occurring naturally, at the exact location where 4 religions independently placed the center of the universe, at the exact coordinates that are mathematically equidistant from the poles, on a mountain shaped like a perfect pyramid, is almost impossible to calculate. Because mathematically it shouldn't happen, unless it was designed that way. Ancient Hindu scriptures describe Kailash as the axis mundi, the point where heaven and earth connect. Buddhists call it Mount Meru, the center of all creation. The Bon religion, which predates Buddhism in Tibet by centuries, calls it the 9-story swastika mountain and considers it the soul of Tibet. These aren't metaphors. These are descriptions from civilizations that had no contact with each other, independently identifying the same mountain as the center of everything. The caves they don't want you to find. Tibetan legends speak of secret caves hidden around Mount Kailash. Not ordinary caves. Chambers where enlightened beings, sages, monks, and yogis sit in deep meditation. Alive, still conscious, for centuries. These caves are said to be invisible to ordinary people. You can walk right past them and never know they're there. They exist, according to the traditions, in a dimension that overlaps with ours, but requires spiritual purity to perceive. Pilgrims who have walked the Kora, the 52-kilometer circumambulation around the mountain, report experiences that defy explanation. A sudden shift in consciousness, feelings of euphoria followed by overwhelming dread. The sensation of being watched by something ancient and vast. Some lose their way and find themselves back at their starting point with no memory of turning around, as though the mountain redirected them. One Russian climber named Sergei Chistiakov reported an experience that stopped him in his tracks. He described an overwhelming sense of unworthiness, as though the mountain itself was communicating that he had no right to be there. He descended immediately. He never attempted the climb again. The Tibetan Buddhist monk Milarepa is the only person in recorded history said to have reached the summit. According to the legend, he didn't climb. He flew, riding the first ray of morning sunlight to the peak. The story isn't meant to describe a physical feat. It's a statement that Mount Kailash cannot be conquered by physical means. Only spiritual ascent can reach the top. But here's the disturbing question nobody can answer. If the mountain is just a mountain, why does it behave like something else entirely? What's really inside? Radar mapping studies have suggested that Mount Kailash may contain hollow spaces, cavities, tunnels, internal chambers that shouldn't exist inside a natural geological formation. The forbidden texts reportedly describe these chambers in detail, not as natural caves but as rooms, constructed spaces with purpose and function. The monk's testimony claims the manuscripts referred to Mount Kailash as a repository, a vault of knowledge so profound that humanity was sealed away from it until it was ready. Ancient Hindu and Jain scriptures agree. They state that Lord Shiva and the first Tirthankara concealed the greatest secrets of the universe inside Kailash. Not written words, vibrations, energies. Knowledge encoded into the mountain itself, accessible only through deep meditation and a pure heart. The monk who revealed the texts added one final detail that has haunted researchers ever since. He said the manuscripts contain a warning. The mountain is not just a vault, it is a mechanism, and it is still active. Whatever is inside Mount Kailash, whatever it's protecting, whatever it's running, it has been operating for longer than human civilization has existed. The texts say it will continue until the day it is meant to open. And when that day comes, according to the manuscripts, everything changes. Not slowly, not gradually, everything at once. So, let's put it all together. A pyramid-shaped mountain with no geological explanation for its symmetry. A summit no human has ever reached. Climbers who age decades in hours. Compasses that spin uselessly. Technology that fails. 4 rivers flowing in 4 directions, sustaining 1 billion people. A location mathematically equidistant from both poles. Alignment with ancient sacred sites across the planet. 4 religions independently declaring it the center of the universe. Hidden caves containing meditating sages. Forbidden texts describing it as an ancient machine. Radar evidence of hollow chambers inside, and a permanent government ban on anyone getting close enough to find out what's really there. This is not some forgotten ruin buried in a jungle. This is a 6,000-meter structure sitting in plain sight that defies every natural explanation we have. And the people who know the most about it, the monks, the lamas, the spiritual traditions that have guarded it for millennia, are all saying the same thing. Don't climb it. Don't touch it. Don't open it. Not because it's sacred, because it's dangerous. Because whatever is inside was sealed for a reason. And because the day it opens, we won't get a warning. We'll get a revelation. Mount Kailash has stood for longer than any civilization on Earth. It has watched empires rise and fall. It has turned away every climber, every expedition, every attempt to unlock its secrets. It sits at the mathematical center of the world, shaped like something that was built, humming with energy that science cannot explain, guarding something that ancient manuscripts say will change the course of human history. And it's waiting.